Now let's think about how we'll implement our formation. Whenever a new player is added to the crowd, it goes to a certain place. For example, maybe our new player, our new character will be placed here and the other one will be placed here. So there's a certain formation to that. It's not random. So for example, if I open this up, we'll see that there are many transforms in there which is set at different positions. So we want our crowd to basically arrange them in this manner. And yeah, so that's a very simple way to do it. Having said that, we'll also need to have a prefab of this person, and because we have this prefab, we'll now remove it and we'll start to think about a script that will control the whole crowd and add new person onto the crowd and remove persons from the crowd. So we have disabled all our game objects here because we don't want any visual of it. We just need the reference to their transforms, which we already have here. And we have our player crowd class. Let's open it up. Let's start off with the add shooter function here. So whenever we whenever we call this function, we want to add a new shooter on according to our formation, right? So we have a list here that's tracking how many shooters we have. To get the latest index of the shooters, we just take the count of the shooters and negate it by 1, and then we search through our index of the spawn points at that specific index here to get the position, and then we instantiate our shooter on that position, and also finally we add our shooter to our shooter list. So this is basically the add shooter function, and we also have a remove shooter here. It's pretty straightforward. And we have this set function which basically sets the crowd size onto a certain amount. So first we check that if the shooters count is already equals to the set amount, we will return, and depending on if it's more or less, we add or remove shooters accordingly. We can see that we have this debug function here which actually sets the crowd with the debug size. So this is basically to debug things in the editor before moving forward with our development. So at this point we have temporarily disabled our move forward so that our crowd stays here while we do our debugging. And onto the player crowd, we can right click and click on the set to see that our 5 people have been instantiated here according to our formation. And if I wanna instantiate 10 people, let's set it to 10 and then call the set function again. So we can see that it's working very nicely. We start by creating a simple trigger which has a collider and modifier crowd script that modifies our crowd, and it has a basic canvas and some simple identifiers that defines the trigger. If we open up the modifier crowd, we can see that it inherits from the modifier base, and depending on the information that it has, for example, how to modify the crowd, it sets the UI. And the most important thing goes on here where we have this modify function, and depending on if we need to add more people or if we need to remove people, we call the necessary functions accordingly. Oh, pretty nice, it's working as expected. Now let's see how it works with a positive and negative modifier of the crowd. So as expected we have 4, and now as expected we have 2. But there's a bug here because if we don't go through the +3 first, if we go through this, we see that everything goes crazy and we have this error log. And to fix this, it's pretty simple. We add 2 more functions, one called can add and can remove, which will basically check if our index are at the correct place. So these are two helper functions, and we can use this in our add shooter and remove shooter functions to make sure that we can actually add or we can actually remove, and that basically solves our error.